"Hey, could you possibly take me to the land of water? I'd be willing to pay," Boruto asked, for the 8th time that day. The fisherman he had asked looked up from where he was repairing his nets, laughed heartedly, and then shook his head. Boruto felt his eye twitch uncontrollably as he was denied, again. After the longest hike in his life, he finally reached the coast of the Land of Fire, and found a moderately populated fishing village near a small bay. There was no less than 20, perhaps 30 fishing vessels docked in the village, and after approaching each of the captains in turn, he was denied passage. He offered to pay them, denied. He offered to pay and work for them, denied. He offered to pay and work and guard them as a ninja, denied. It was beyond infuriating. No one was traveling between the Land of Fire and water. Every time he asked, they just laughed or scoffed at him, before sending him on his way. It was beginning to wear on Boruto's already frayed nerves. Sighing heavily, Boruto gave up on the captain of the Water Dragon's bride, and went into the town proper to find something to eat. The docks reeked of dead fish anyway, Boruto told himself. It was going to seep into his clothes. He'd never get the smell out. Wandering through the village market, Boruto found an old woman manning a stall that sold, of all things, cinnamon rolls. They were a guilty pleasure of his mother, and he'd always managed to beg one off of her whenever she brought them home. Fishing around his pockets, he withdrew a few ryo and purchased a box. Finding a scenic spot at the end of a pier, Boruto sat down and treated himself to a feast of sugar, savoring the sweet pastries. His mom wasn't here to tell him not to eat the whole box of 6 in one sitting, but he knew he'd probably be sick if he did, so he abstained. Placing his pack on his knees, he sifted through his clothes until he found the wad of ryo he had stolen from his father. He was running dangerously low on money. In fact, counting the money he just spent on his treat, he probably didn't have enough to barter passage to the Land of Water. Sighing deeply, Boruto ate 2 more pastries while kicking his legs back and forth, watching his reflection in the water below the pier. Folding the box and placing it and the remaining 3 cinnamon rolls reverently at the top of his pack, Boruto stood and began to concentrate, focusing his chakra into the soles of his feet. Taking a leap of faith, he jumped from the pier and landed on the water. There was one gut-wrenching moment where he felt himself sink. Then it passed as his chakra took hold and held him above the water. He bobbed with the tide, getting his bearings. Boruto had excellent chakra control. It was required to be a practitioner of the gentle fist, and all Hyuga had a natural finesse and skill. His was the best of anyone in his team, except maybe Sarada. Her mother was teaching her a few more things about medical ninjutsu, which arguably required more control than even his gentle fist. The gentle fist was all about expelling your chakra from your chakra points and blasting your opponent with them. Medical ninjutsu focused on repairing even the smallest damage at a cellular level. "Here we go," Boruto declared, eager to get on his way now that he had found his sea legs. No one would take him to the Land of Water, and he didn't have the money for a boat anyway. Well, he didn't really want to run the whole way. That was his only choice. But it did give him one rare opportunity. He could visit the Land of Whirlpools, the ancestral home of the Uzumaki Clan. It had been raised in Third Great War by the Hidden Cloud and Hidden Mist, fearing that the Hidden Whirlpool would come to their longtime ally, the Hidden Leaf's aid. Supposedly, it was nothing but ruins now, but there were rumors that after the Fourth Great War, some of the remaining Uzumaki clansmen had returned and were attempting to rebuild their clan. If it was true, Boruto had to investigate. He could just make out the fuzzy outline of an island on the horizon, and knew that there was only one island off the coast, the Land of Whirlpools. It wasn't even noon yet, and he had plenty of time. Boruto huffed as he wiped the sweat from his face. He was exhausted physically and had spent a large portion of his chakra running over the bay that separated the Land of Fire and Whirlpools. He was soaked from the ocean spray, and his clothes stuck to his body like a second skin. Luckily, his pack was water resistant, standard issue ninja gear. That meant his delicious cinnamon rolls were safe. It was the only thing that kept him going as he moved closer and closer to the Land of Whirlpools. One might think that after being able to walk on water, running over large bodies of water would be easy. They would be wrong. The constant rocking of the ocean, combined with the occasional large waves, forced Boruto to zigzag across the bay, avoiding the worst of the turbulent waters. And of course, because I'm never lucky, the waves just keep getting worse and worse, Boruto cursed. Boruto felt the hairs on the back of his neck raise. Snapping his head up from his reflection in the water, he came face to face with a towering wave of water that slammed into him. Inhaling on instinct, he sputtered when he breathed water. A moment later, the wave passed and Boruto crawled onto the surface of the water, channeling his chakra into his arms and legs. Seeing another wave coming, and it was moving sideways across the ocean, Boruto quickly stood and weaved a series of handstands. Water style, water prison jutsu. Boruto took a deep breath as water surged around him, forming a sphere of water that levitated a few inches off the surface of the water. The next wave impacted his watery prison and quickly passed. Releasing the jutsu and taking a gasping breath of air, Boruto cast a few quick glances around. More waves were coming. Boruto turned and ran, putting as much distance between him and the oncoming onslaught as possible. He just managed to get out of the reach as the wave crashed past him, tumbling and dying. Panting, now thoroughly exhausted and soaking wet, Boruto berated himself for ever thinking it was a good idea to walk to the land of whirlpools. Now that he had some distance, he could make out the subtle flow of water as it circled and drained to a series of massive whirlpools that surrounded the island, acting like guardians. Looking back, he was easily several miles out to sea. Even if he turned around, he would run out of chakra before he reached the fishing village again. He didn't fancy swimming the rest of the way as exhausted as he was. Using the water prison jutsu only compounded his already waning chakra reserves. Turning back to the island, which was only a few minutes of brisk running away, he steeled his resolve. Through the whirlpool it is, Boruto thought sardonically. He moved closer to the whirling waves, staying just out of their reach. When he was as close as he could to get without being in their sphere of influence, he bent his knees and waited. The moment the next wave in the cycle passed him, Boruto took off at a sprint, kicking up water and leaving vague footprints in the sea. He weaved through the whirlpools, trying to stay out of the stronger current as much as possible. Easier said than done. Boruto could feel the ocean shift beneath his feet as the whirlpool raged and churned beneath the water surface. He knew that if he ever sank below the surface, he'd drown. His life would be cut tragically short. Adrenaline burned in his veins as his legs pumped faster and faster, spurting across the surface. He could feel the tide shift as another wave began to descend upon him. Looking up, Boruto could see the beach of the land of whirlpools in the distance. He was so close, yet so far. He wouldn't make it. Boruto blinked rapidly as he felt an unbearable, painful pressure begin to build behind his eyes. Weaving through the handstills, he formed another water prison and took one last deep breath of air. Before the whirlpool broke upon him, his heart fluttered in his chest and the pain in his eyes doubled as he was dragged beneath the waves, cast around like a rag doll. The ocean was power. Nothing was stronger than the pull of the tide, dragging him deeper into the depths. His lungs burned for air as he was thrown mercilessly around the whirlpool. Channeling more chakra into his jutsu, he began forcing his way forward, trying to fight his way out of the whirlpool's influence. Boruto was fighting a losing battle. And then, as suddenly as it came, he was released, thrown violently forward and free of the whirlpool. He could see the sandy floor of the beach as he approached the shore, and the pressure in his eyes dissipated. Boruto blinked away a few tears of relief, thanking whatever powers may be that he would live to see another day. Directing his body upwards, Boruto broke the surface and sucked in a gasping breath of air that soothed the burning ache in his lungs. He could still feel his heart beating out of his chest at the near-death experience. With languid, pain movements, Boruto swam to the beach, crawling across the sand and collapsing in an exhausted heap near a washed-up log. Too tired to object, he fell asleep. Boruto groaned as his eyes fluttered open. The first thing he saw was a tiny crab staring him down, clicking his pincers menacingly. Laughing and shooting away the offending crustacean, he sat up and looked around. "I made it! I made it!" Boruto exclaimed. "Congratulations," a voice said. Boruto turned around. A young man with striking crimson hair and piercing amber eyes was sitting on the log next to him. He wore a dark green jacket and a black headband around his neck. In the center of the silver plate was a stylized emblem, some sort of swirling pattern. It was the same one he had seen in the Jonin jackets that the Hidden Leaf wore. No sooner had he finished the thought did the man punch him square in the jaw, and then Boruto returned to his dreams. Blinking away the blackness, Boruto woke up with a feeling of soreness in his jaw that made him wince. He was strung over someone's shoulder like a sack of potatoes. Said person was currently jogging through a sparse forest. "Struggling will knock you back out, kid," the voice, a man, instructed. Boruto stepped in. His memories of what happened came rushing back to him. Realizing now that the man was a ninja, Boruto reluctantly obeyed. His mind whirring as he began to imagine all sorts of horrible things these ninja could do to him. He was a foreign combatant on their soil. He just didn't know which village used the spiraling symbol as their crest. Boruto raised his head and glanced around, hoping the red-headed man wouldn't take offense. Just as he did, the two of them broke through the forest and out onto a hill that overlooked a sprawling, grassy valley with a wide river running through the middle. The valley was surrounded by hills on all sides, and the sun just barely crested the peaks, painting the landscape in beautiful hues of oranges and yellows. It was breathtaking. Then, Boruto noticed the ruins. In the middle of the valley, built around the river, was a sprawling metropolis of ruins. All crumbled stone and rotting wood, it was the corpse of a forgotten city. In the very center, much smaller than the ruins, stood a few buildings. They weren't tall, but they were dignified, each one crafted with meticulous care, swirling emblems, the same as his captor's headband, adorned the stone pillars that held the buildings off the ground, and out of the reach of the raging river. "Welcome to the Hidden Eddy, kid. For your sake, I hope you have a good excuse for being here," the ninja said, readjusting and tightening his grip on Boruto. Boruto swallowed. His tongue was suddenly dry. As they neared the center of the ruins and closer to the village proper, he could see other people milling around. There were a few down by the riverbank, hoisting great nets across it. A few stray, unlucky fish were caught and pulled in. More were scattered through the ruins, though at seeing the man and Boruto, they began to return to the tiny village. A handful of women and children gazed down at Boruto from the windows of their home, looks of suspicion and curiosity adorning their features. And they all had the same striking crimson hair as his captor, Boruto noted. There were a few heads of black here and there, even another blonde, like him, but the overwhelming majority were redheads. Boruto let out a groan as he was roughly deposited on the ground. Looking up, an older woman loomed over him. She had a strange hue of pink hair, almost like it was the faded crimson that the others had. Though the lines of her face spoke age, the strength of her posture spoke power. Around her neck was a white length of cloth with a silver plaque attached. It had the same whirling symbol the other ninja had. Her eyes were her most striking feature. They were a deep, fierce crimson, even more so than the hair of those around her. They seemed to see through him. It was unnerving. Hi, Boruto said with a nervous chuckle, scratching at the back of his head. The old woman turned to the ninja who had brought him to the village and nodded once, a quick bird-like motion. Boruto didn't even see the man weave the hand seals. He was so fast. The earth below him opened up and swallowed him whole before spitting him back up, allowing his head to rest above the stone. Boruto yelped in fear and discomfort as his prison held him in its grasp, his heart fluttering again. The same painful pressure in his eyes returned in full as tears threatened to spill. The woman approached him with a powerful, steady gait and kneeled. She parted his bangs gently, confusing Boruto, before withdrawing her hands and weaving several hand seals. She placed her palm on Boruto's forehead, and he stiffened as he felt foreign chakra invade his system. "Oh God," Boruto swore. "They're going to torture me." He waited for the burn of fire, or the shock of lightning, or the smothering of water. None came. The woman removed her hand and patted him twice on the cheek before standing. "My name is Akane, and I'm the third Uzumaki," the woman said. Boruto nodded. It was a very apt name, brilliant red. "I'm going to ask you some questions, and it would be in your interest to answer them honestly. Who are you?" Boruto swallowed, trying to wet his dry tongue. "Mitsuki," Boruto said, crying out as a searing pain scorched through his skull and down his spine. Akane looked down at him sadly. "Try again, dear," she instructed. "Boruto," he managed to say, gritting his teeth. The pain stopped, and he gasped in relief. He could feel the foreign chakra pulsing in his forehead, thanks to his natural chakra control honed from years of gentle fist training. It has to be a seal, Boruto realized. It made sense. If these people really were the Uzumaki of the Hidden Eddy, everyone knew they were gifted in sealing jutsu. "Surname?" Akane questioned. "Uzumaki," Boruto admitted quietly, not wanting to experience whatever the seal did to him again. His answers seemed to both shock and excite the gathered crowd. Akane nodded sagely above him. "That explains how you passed the barrier," she commented. "What are you doing here?" I was looking for passage to the land of water. No ships were making the journey, so I ran here," Boruto explained. "Do you bear any ill intent towards the Hidden Eddy, the Uzumaki Clan, or any who call this land home?" Akane continued her questioning. "No," Boruto answered quickly. His eyes flickered over to the man who had brought him to the village. He was holding his pack, shifting through the contents. He seemed to discover something that made his eyes widen. Boruto knew what it was before he even took it out. He handed his headband over to Akane, who gazed at it, and him, imperiously. "Are you a ninja of the hidden leaf?" she asked with a raised, curious eyebrow. "Yes, no, maybe," Boruto said. He was technically a ninja of the hidden leaf. He was also technically a missing ninja. He didn't know how the seal would interpret his answer. Luckily, the seal remained inactive, and Akane just nodded. "Would I be correct to assume that you are the missing son of the Hokage?" Akane asked. Boruto just nodded. "Let him out, Kohaku," Akane instructed. His captor, Kohaku, weaved a few hand seals and placed his hand on the ground. The earth opened, its great maw, and spat Boruto back out. Boruto shivered at the feeling of freedom again. Being trapped on all sides by solid stone was unnerving in the greatest degree. "I apologize, dear. Hold still and allow me to remove the seal," Akane said soothingly. Boruto stilled and allowed the older woman to part his bangs once more and remove the seal. He sighed in relief as the foreign chakra left his system. Her hands lingered, glowing with a shade of green light. Boruto felt the muscles in his neck and shoulders relax as the mystic palm soothed away the aches and pains that the seal had inflicted upon him. After a few moments, she withdrew her hands. "We can never be too careful with our security, I'm afraid. There are many who would take great pleasure in seeing our clan perish from this world forever. We take intruders very seriously," the Uzumaki explained. Boruto nodded. He understood, really. Casting a few looks around, he noticed more and more people were coming out of their homes to see him. Now that they knew he wasn't a threat, their expressions had changed from one of anxiety to one of excitement. "You're free to stay as long as you wish. Kohaku, show him to the guest quarters, will you?" the Uzumaki instructed. "Wait," Boruto called, stopping the Uzumaki. Akane turned and eyed him. "You're not going to turn me in? You know the Hokage is looking for me, after all," he explained. The woman just chuckled. "You're an Uzumaki, and we protect our own. We here are the very rare few, the last of our clan in existence. Your father has made generous donations to our village over the years, but if he expects us to hand you over to him, he has another thing coming," Akane explained, chin raised proudly. Boruto was humbled by the unbridled display of loyalty the Uzumaki showed him, simply because they were family. Not in blood, but in name. It was a rarity in the world these days. "Come on, kid," Kohaku said, pulling him to his feet, but not unkindly. A few of the other villagers gave him small smiles and welcoming nods as Kohaku led him to an unused house. "Sorry about being so rough on you, by the way," he said conversationally. "I'm one of the few ninja we have. It's my job to make sure everyone is safe. Can't take any chances." Boruto looked around. It was true. Other than the Uzumaki and Kohaku, there were only a handful of men and women with headbands. Boruto could count them in one hand. "Wow," he said. "I never imagined there would be so many people here. There are rumors on the mainland that the Lane of Whirlpools was being rebuilt, but nothing like this." Kohaku nodded sadly. After the end of the Fourth Great War, the Uzumaki began to travel the world, looking for the scattered remains of our clan. Anyone she found, she sent here. It's been slow progress, but we're rebuilding. Our greatest weakness is the lack of ninja. After the destruction of our country, the surviving clansmen went into hiding, and didn't pass their skills down to the next generation for fear of discovery, he explained. "Who is she?" "Akane, the Uzumaki, I mean," Boruto asked. Kohaku eyed Bolt, trying to understand why he wanted to know. Chalking up to curiosity, he shrugged. "She's the granddaughter of the first Uzukage's brother. You would know her better as the niece of your first Hokage's wife." "The daughter of the first Uzumaki," he explained. "No way!" Boruto exclaimed. The Uzumaki was someone distantly related to Mito Uzumaki, wife of Hashirama Senju, the most powerful ninja to ever live, founder of the Hidden Leaf. That practically made her royalty in Boruto's eyes. Kohaku nodded in appreciation of the respect apparent in Boruto's eyes. "She is very wise, and the strongest Uzumaki alive. Not counting your father, of course. But then again, he hasn't cared much about the clan and its heritage," he said. "Yeah, how come he hasn't said anything about this place? We could be helping you guys rebuild," Boruto exclaimed. "He visited once, shortly after the war. The Hokage and the Hidden Leaf make very generous monetary donations every year, and for that we are grateful. As far as defending us, the Uzumaki has erected a barrier around the island that prevents any except those of Uzumaki blood to pass. It was agreed that it would be safer if no Hidden Leaf ninja were to be stationed here," Kohaku explained. "Here we are," he added, gesturing at a tall wooden house with stone pillars holding it above the raging river below. It was as well built as it looked. The Uzumaki clan built their new homes like a fortress. It seems I've been assigned as your watcher during your stay here, Kohaku said as Boruto walked up the steps to his new home. I imagine I'll be seeing you tomorrow. Keep out of trouble, kid. Boruto opened the door to the house. It was nice, he supposed. It was a different style of architecture compared to what he was used to. The bed. He hadn't slept on something soft and warm in weeks. He couldn't even remember how many days. After laying down for a moment and just enjoying the feeling, Boruto sat up and cupped his hands. Like he did every night, he began to go through the steps of forming Rasengan. Rotation, power, containment, release. Rotation, power, containment, release. He was rewarded with a medium-sized orb of pure chakra. Releasing the jutsu, he performed the steps again and again and again, until he fell asleep. Morning came all too early. Get up, kid, Boruto heard someone say. A moment later, he was hoisted out of bed by the ankles and deposited on the ground. What the hell, Boruto yelled. What could possibly warrant his attention so early? It wasn't even noon yet. He was not accustomed to being up this hour after weeks of freedom. The Uzumaki wants you, Kohaku simply said. Boruto grumbled but quickly got dressed. If Akane wanted him, he'd go. Unless it was his stupid Hokage of a father. Walking through the village in the daylight, Boruto noticed more people out and about. It was clear to him that they were slowly clearing away the ruins, salvaging what they could of their culture and history while trying to survive day to day. They didn't have to walk far. Kohaku pointed at the door of a large building. Boruto assumed it was where the Uzumaki worked and did her day-to-day business. Boruto quickly realized the building was not, in fact, the Uzumaki's office. It was a school. Long rows of desks and chairs filled the room, and at the front there were 10 kids eagerly listening to the Uzumaki speak. At Boruto's entrance, they all looked up and shot him beaming smiles. He guessed they didn't get visitors often. Ah, our new student. Come, take a seat, Akane said, pointing to one of the free chairs. The kids, ranging from ages 5 to 15 as far as Boruto could tell, parted and allowed him to join. So long as you weren't leaving today, this would be a good opportunity to continue your education, the Uzumaki told him. Boruto shrugged. He really wasn't one for studying. He never let school get in the way of his education. Now where was I? Akane pondered aloud. A little girl in front of Boruto raised her hand, practically jumping up and down. You were just telling us about how old you were, she exclaimed. Boruto looked at the girl like she was insane. Yes, very good, Asuka, the Uzumaki commented. We of the Uzumaki clan naturally possess a strong vitality. That means we live long lives. So long, in fact, that we were once known as the village of longevity. There are other benefits too. We healed from injuries faster, and we recovered from exhaustion quicker, she explained after seeing the confused look of some of the younger children. Suddenly, things clicked for Boruto. The reason he and his sister and his dad healed so fast was because they were Uzumakis. Though the Nine Tails probably helped his dad more than his heritage did. He was immensely thankful for that family trait. His arm was still sore from where the demon bear had broken it. It also means we naturally have large reserves of chakra, she added, which seemed to excite some of the older students. Boruto guessed this was the new generation of ninja. Who better to teach them than the Uzumaki herself? Of course, our strength earned us many friends, but also many enemies. For a long time, we Uzumaki did not marry outside of the clan. We lived so long that it was an inevitability that we would outlive our spouses. That all changed when we became allies with the legendary Senju. They were the only other clan whose vitality rivaled our own. We had finally found our equals, Uzumaki explained with a nostalgic look on her face. Generations of marriage between our two clans resulted in children that were far stronger than Bolt, and our two clans profited greatly from our alliance. Ironically, that was when our enemies' fear began to overrule their reason. During the height of the Third Great Ninja War, an alliance of the Hidden Cloud and Hidden Mist ninjas snuck into our village, and slaughtered our clan in the night, the Uzumaki said, her voice hard and cold. After that, our clan was scattered to the four winds, she added sadly. Now, enough of that, the Uzumaki declared. Our clan was renowned for our sealing jutsu. Has everyone been practicing their enclosing and unsealing jutsu? The students nodded, pulling out scrolls, brushes, and jars of ink. Boruto looked around helplessly. Thankfully, one of the older students took pity on him, and handed him a spare set of tools and a blank scroll. Good, Akane said with a nod. Since we have a new student today, and you need to practice, we shall review what we learned last lesson. Please take a kunai and draw the characters on the scroll like so. Boruto didn't know how truly difficult sealing jutsus were at the time. By the end of the day, however, his wrists and fingers ached, and he was painted inky black from the tips of his fingers to his elbows, and running dangerously low on chakra. The third Uzumaki was a slave driver.